it's this idea of if you get rid of the thing that is like the destructive or the shadow, you kind of also get rid of the power. So there's this, I think that as, especially as a child, there is this fear of power. And also, there's no context for power when you're a child. Of course, it's terrifying. But as you lean into it, and I think that is what happened to me early, when I leaned into this dark character and I started to have fun with it, I think I started to feel my power.
What if real lasting transformation happens when we're willing to face our shadows, the messy, uncomfortable parts of ourselves we'd rather not look at? And what if the things we avoid out of fear or shame are actually the treasures that wake us up? I'm Carrie Jacobs-Crovetto, executive coach and meditation teacher, and this is Finding Treasures in the Trash. Through raw, unfiltered conversations, I invite you to turn toward what you've disowned and begin integrating it back into the whole beautiful human you were meant to be. Your treasure doesn't always live in the light. Sometimes it's buried in the trash. So, grab your gloves, let's go dumpster diving. Hello, and welcome to Finding Treasures in the Trash with Carrie Jacobs-Crovetto. I'm Carrie. So glad to have you with us again. I could not be more excited for today's guest. I have to say that I do prep calls with every one of my guests, and I can tell you that this one is going to move you, inspire you, challenge the way you think. So my guest today is Mandy Ingber. Mandy is a best-selling New York Times author of the book Yogolosophy. She was a Broadway star and child actor by the age of 14, and that went on for some time before she became an established yoga teacher and astrologer. She has taught some of the most famous yoga celebrities we know, including Jennifer Aniston, and who else did you teach? You wrote me.
So many people.
So many people, big stars. Just throw out a couple names just to impress
I mean,
people.
I always hate to throw out names. I feel like you should be doing that because how do I pick one? I mean,
How do you pick one? Okay, I'll pick some of the ones that I have on the list. We've got Helen Hunt, Ricky Lake, Jennifer Lawrence, Jennifer Mayer, Brooke Shields, Kate Beckinsale, just to name a few, And now you're here to talk with us today about finding treasures in the trash. And I have to tell you, Mandy, this is just raw truth right now. I meet a lot of people. I talk to a lot of people. I mean, I'm involved in Stanford University. I'm an executive coach for international clients all around the world. I sit in meditations. I do all kinds of certifications. And I do have to say, our prep conversation really rocked my world.
wow.
Yeah. And for a couple of reasons. One is, first of all, the authenticity at which you come at your life is really impressive.
Thank you.
Second of all, I just had never heard some of what you said. I feel like sometimes we're just like regurgitating, which is fine by me if we're leaving artifacts for the young people that come after us. I'm just fine with repeating things in new and different ways. But you just said things that I'd never heard of before.
Oh my gosh. Well, no pressure.
No pressure here, Mandy. No pressure. But I thought we would start where you and I started,
Okay.
which is we kind of started at the beginning. And we started at the beginning of your life, but we talked about the idea that, you dove right in that sometimes a shadow isn't a dark thing.
Ah, yes. Okay. So I remember this part of the conversation. I just want to say one thing that's just popping into my head right this second, which is our culture is so obsessed with keeping things like on the high and whether things are good or bad. It's like people want to like focus on the good. There's something about including all of it that's actually really a relief I have found for myself. That's just like a main thing that I wanted to say is that we can include all of it. And so you're right, that's part of it. Like, I think maybe that was it. I have a tendency to lead with my darkest self. Like, if I go on a date with somebody, I, like, immediately wanna show them, like, all my flaws. That's what I lead with. And so, the thing of that sometimes a shadow isn't always the dark part of yourself. For me, a shadow part of myself is kind of like a ditz because I'm so smart and it's like I always think I have to know everything and I want to be an expert and all that. So my shadow is actually kind of being like a bit of a ditz. That's one of my shadows.
You had talked about certainly the whole thing doesn't need to be us going back and, like, redoing this conversation, but this was just something that really stayed with me. You talked about uncovering as a young woman,
Yeah.
going to and I wanna let you tell the story, but you talked about going to a really creative school that kind of unleashed
Mm.
a joyful shadow, this entertaining this piece of you that you
Yes.
had kind of disowned or shoved to the background of your life up until that point or didn't even know was there maybe.
Yeah. So when I was in the fourth grade, my my parents sent me to this school for experiential learning, and I had done really well in grade school. Like, I fit really well into that bell curve. I'm a good student. I know how to take tests. I'm that kind of I was born like that. And not everybody's like that, right? Because not everybody thinks the same way. I just so happened to be able to think in that way. So when I went to this school for experiential learning, all of a sudden it like unleashed a lot of the creativity that was in me within me. And so that is when I started to incorporate acting into my life, and in this particular school, there was actually a we did this thing called theater on wheels where we would go to, like, old people's homes and we would perform, and we did a takeoff on the Empire Strikes Back. And my 2 best friends who were like, one what is the blonde prettiest girl in the school, one was the brunette prettiest girl in the school, you know what I
There's
mean? Like,
always those. We always
well,
have
I
those.
overheard them one time saying, like, "You're the prettiest." No, I'm the prettiest and you're the second prettiest, like that kind of a thing. So those 2, of course, got, like, the Princess Leia part and then like, the Han Solo or whatever. And I was cast as the Darth Vader character, Death Vapor.
Ugh.
And I was just, like, more I was like, I don't know, I don't remember how I processed this alone, but it was just I remember feeling, like, so bummed that I had to be the bad guy. That was really a bummer to me. And but I ended up throwing myself into the character, and it ended up, of course, being the most fun part to play, and we would go do we'd perform for little kids and old people, and I just remember, like, getting the huge response from everybody, based on this villain. And so that was, I think, a really positive experience that I had with pouring myself into something that I thought was a negative. And that is actually, as an actor, I often did play character roles because of the way that I look, because of my looks. And they are often sort of exaggerated shadow parts because the ingenue is usually like like the everything great. And then the shadow character is either like the best friend who's like the geek or like somebody who's like a real hard ass bitch or, like whatever those character things are. And I actually remember there was a teacher, and I think I shared this with you in our talk before. There was a teacher, and I think her name was Sandra Seacat. I never went to her personally, but I remember some of my friends telling me that her theory was that people got cast as their shadow.
Ooh.
I had a few roles like that.
I just need to take that in for a minute.
Like,
Like, people get cast as their shadow.
mm,
And I kind of like, I'm just in the theater world, but there's also kind of a wondering that I have about, is there something that, somebody like this teacher sees where they're seeing right through into what the potentiality of somebody is and their sort of
mm.
like hidden moment.
What I will say is that as an actor, I think that that's something that's very healing about being an actor. is that you really can move toward these scary scenes and parts of yourself in a safe way, which is originally why I was drawn to acting, I think, because I had a volatile father, and that pushed me, and this is definitely a finding treasures in the trash kind of thing. I think that finding a place like on a stage in front of people was a safe space to explore the more intense emotions that I think I was feeling as a result of being in a scary environment in my childhood, to my little self. My father was just way too young when he had me and didn't have a filter, so I was taking in a lot that was too much for me at the time, and acting really saved me in that way. So I think that there's like this version of working stuff out. I think a lot of actors work things out by the roles that they get. I don't know if sometimes I think the universe just works out that way. I do think it's a healing process, probably for the actor, and then probably as a result for the viewer, the audience being brought into the experience, that whatever the transformation that the actor is going through. I think that with really good actors that they bring people into the experience with them.
Mhm.
So it's a very healing thing for the shadow stuff.
You talked about you talked about your looks, which I really relate to because I have very exotic looks as well.
Mhm.
And you talked about, you shared about always sort of being cast as next to the ingenue.
Mhm.
As you went on in your career and you did more and more work, I think you got more prolific parts. How did that shape you?
What was my experience of looking the way that I look? Is that
Yeah. Particularly yes, but particularly in regards to the journey you were taking with acting and your relationship to it.
well, I think that especially at the age, because I became an actor, people say child actor, and although that is true, I really started when I was 14, which is you're an adolescent or supposedly becoming an adolescent. I leaned into an eating disorder, which prolonged my childhood in a way in physically. But I think that I felt ugly, when I was a kid in a way because I looked more like, say, the Wicked Witch than the princess in the fairy tale, So I think that just being Jewish looking is what I will say. It's like not
Ugh.
my favorite look for many reasons. And I think it made me feel like conspicuous. And and also because I mean this is like we can go deeper and deeper. It's like I feel like I'm digging deeper and deeper into the shadow, but my family, on my mother's side, my mother was born in a displaced persons camp right after the Holocaust. And so my family, my mother's father's family was killed in the Holocaust. And so there was a part, and they were like, my grandfather was a blonde, blue eyed Jew. And then I look super Jewish. I kind of look like my father's side of the family. And I think that looking like that made me feel like I was failing in a way, because I couldn't pass and I couldn't have passed. So a lot of my self criticism, I think, revolves around, like, looking too Jewish, to be honest.
Mhm.
But what I do believe about in acting was that I thought that my looks limited me, but looking back, it was probably my looks that, got me some roles, even though I think I was a good actor, but so it really to me, it wasn't in terms of work, it wasn't a problem. It was more I think I just felt like it was really more about, "Are guys gonna like me?"
Yeah, but I can see that being so complex, right? Like, you know, I feel like I got my nose fixed when I was 18. I fixed everything so that I looked more white passing. I'm Middle Eastern.
Yeah.
There's kind of a rite of passage in Lebanese culture
Mhm.
where, you fix your nose at 16, 17, 18, that thing is gone, right? And you're told, you're like indoctrinated from the time you're like 5, 6, 7 years old that this is what you're going to do.
Yeah,
I lighten my hair. My hair is normally really dark. So, like, you wouldn't even know,
right.
right? But I still have inside this complexity around, like, what I feel like inside versus acceptance.
Yeah. Thank you for, being so vulnerable, sharing all of that because yeah, I mean, I'm the person that, I think it has a lot to do with my upbringing. Like my mother had a prominent nose, but actually a beautiful nose, and she never got it fixed. My mother has not had any plastic surgery. She didn't dye her hair. It's like she kind of didn't do all that stuff. And so I think in a way, I'm a product of that. But also, so I don't know, there's part of me that on the one hand, I feel like I don't like it, and on the other hand, I defiantly accept who and what I am. So, I understand what you're saying, and it's just a choice that I've made in this lifetime. And ironically, I did get used to my nose. I think by the time I was, like, 21 years old, I even look, I talked about with one of my agents when I don't remember what age, but I talked about maybe getting my nose done, and he said, "Yeah, but then you would just still look like yourself, but with your nose done." So he
Yeah. Yeah.
kinda said that to me, and I was like, "Okay." And then when I was 22, I actually was we didn't talk about this, I don't think, but I was physically assaulted and attempted raped when I was that age. And so, one of the 2 people that was involved in that assault punched my face a lot and broke my nose.
Oh my
And
gosh.
and it was like I was like, "Ugh, I just got used to my nose." And so, my nose, I had to get 2 surgeries, and I didn't fix it
Mhm.
to look a certain way, but it's not my original nose. I actually had a thinner bridge and, all this stuff. So it's funny because I miss my original nose, which was also too big. And, but, so for whatever reason, my nose did get shattered and broken. But and now I just accept that. Like I have a lot of cracks in my face and all of that. So I don't know. I mean, I don't know.
Yeah. Well, and I think, first of all, I just wanna take a moment to acknowledge what you're sharing here about being assaulted and being hit in the face. I mean, that just sounds brutal and horrific. And also, you shared with me about your mom cutting out the pictures of all the any wicked witches, right, in all your books to almost, like, cutting out, like, as if it didn't exist.
Well, let me share that story because it kinda doesn't make sense unless I say it. So my mother, being the eternal optimist that only, like, a person born after the Holocaust would be, um, loved Disney and loved Disneyland and all that stuff, and so when I went back to look at when I was a kid, I was really, really afraid of anything that was like the Wicked Witch. I was really afraid of the Wicked Witch, and so my mother, being like a young 20-year-old mother, she was like, "Oh, I know. I'll just go into these books and just cut out the thing that's upsetting my daughter." And so when you go back to my Disney books, it's just like Snow White and the Seven Dwarfs, and everywhere that there would have been a witch is just like a hole. And I think it was brilliant of her to do that, but I had already seen the witch. So I knew what I knew what had been there, and so my mother she didn't really teach me how to self-soothe, and so I'm just sitting there going, "Well, she's cut." Like, she's cut this out, and then there on subconsciously, I think there might have been a thing of, like, there must be something wrong with me, too,
Totally.
right?
Yeah. My mom used to tell me the story of the ugly duckling,
Mm.
and the story I don't know if I'm sure you remember this, but for younger listeners here, the story is that there's this ugly duckling that's born to a family of swans. And my mom was blonde-haired and green-eyed. She was on the Scottish side of the family, Scotch-Irish, and she was really skinny and tiny, and I was a little rounder. I couldn't see. I had these Coke bottle glasses, and she would read to me from, like, 5 to, like, 14, literally. She would tell me, in the end of the story, of course, the duckling keeps looking in and feels so ugly and grows into thinks it's gonna be a duck, and then one day looks into the water, and lo and behold, it's turned into this beautiful swan, and she
Right,
would
right,
say to me, fully well intended, like, "Someday, you're
right.
gonna be this beautiful swan, and we'll get your nose fixed," and all the things, but, like, what she didn't realize probably is the messages that she was sending, and there was a way that I think she didn't love herself enough and eventually was drug addicted most of her life, but there was a way that she didn't love herself enough, and she sort of put that into my energy in some way.
Yeah, like the idea that what you already are isn't beautiful in the right way. And I didn't my m I wasn't having that message sent to me by my parents, but by society, that is the background noise. And yeah, like, it's just this whole idea that there is a right way to look, that's
Yeah.
is a I mean, that is a cultural issue that we have.
Yeah, and so now I'm just going back, so here you are at, adolescence, and then you get cast as you don't get cast as, the pretty friends, you got cast as Darth Vader or the dark character, I really have a lot of, like, I don't know if it's awe that I have for you that you took those moments, and those moments became I mean, it is finding treasures in the trash. You took those moments, and that became the grist for the mill, that became the learning.
It was the most fun. I mean, that's the thing I think that we start to discover is like, well, this is the most fun. And I think that as I then was growing up, yes, I may have been playing roles that, I mean, I wasn't, not all of the roles were like, oh, she's not pretty. I mean, it wasn't like that. But in my real life, I mean, people, like I was attractive enough to like the people that I liked me too, but I think that some of those experiences, once you start having those experiences, I think that it reinforces something in you like, "Oh, there is something about me." I think you have to find those things about you. Now, we live in a society where there's a sameness about things that we are conditioned to want to be. So, like, for instance, I have super curly hair. I did straighten my hair, like, until I was 17, I used to blow it straight, and I would, pull it back tight and put in a curler, and I would make sure it was perfectly straight. And then in my rebellion, I guess, in the like, in the late '80s, I started to let it be curly, and fortunately, Jennifer Beals came along and for just to, like, open the door for, like, a second with Flashdance, which was annoying.
Totally.
Like, "Oh, great, okay, like, my hair is gonna be in style for a year." But I don't know, it's like this weird thing that I have. It's like a defiance too, because 'cause I'm a little bit like, I wanna hold space for an alternative. You
Yeah.
know?
Yeah, and, I think that it's like, don't cut like, I'm using that as a metaphor because it was very meaningful to me when you shared it. It's like, don't why are we cutting dark, exotic, like, women out of the picture? Like, why did the story get written in that way?
Yeah, I mean, but also, like, it's like nothing's inherently wrong with it. I think that what it is ultimately okay, so we talked about, bringing astrology into it, and what I just wanna say for a second is, so there's the same planet that represents, destruction represents power. The same planet that represents fighting and war represents sexuality and desire. So it's just kind of it's like it's this idea of if you get rid of the thing that is like the destructive or the shadow, you kind of also get rid of the power. So there's this, I think that as, especially as a child, there is this fear of power. And also, there's no context for power when you're a child. Of course, it's terrifying. But as you lean into it, and I think that is what happened to me early, when I leaned into this dark character and I started to have fun with it, I started to just, I think I started to feel my power. And I think that may have a lot to do with why, why women are, I don't want to just limit it to women, but in a way we are taught to be disconnected from our shadow because we are taught to be disconnected from our power. And I think that that is changing.
Mm. Yeah, but it isn't, it is, but then you look at like AI and what's happening out there in the world and this the kind of just like you said, the sameness of everything. It's like I notice now that the people I'm drawn to, like if I'm scrolling through TikTok or Instagram, I'm stopping more and more on the people that are like, don't look don't have this perfect look about them, Like, I had a moment where I was like, "Do I even put lipstick on anymore? Or do I just" because there's something about being raw and real and standing in your true power, like, because there's nothing fake about it anymore.
Yeah. I've played with all of that. I mean, like I played with wearing my pajamas everywhere in the 80s. I played with like, I don't wear makeup very often. I play with it. I play with authenticity, I suppose is a way to say it. And I don't know, I've gotten comfortable with the fact that I don't have to like everything about myself. I don't have to like every line that I'm getting. But we talked about this. Like, I don't like every line that I'm getting on my face, but that doesn't mean that I get rid of it. It's like I have a friend who, just she just got a facelift, and I have a lot of friends that are getting facelifts now because I'm 57, and that's what my friends are doing is they're getting facelifts. That's where we're at on the timeline. So I love myself, but I just didn't love, this. I just wanted to cut this out, and I'm just like, yeah, I don't love like my, my jowls. I don't love that, but I'm going with it. I
Yeah.
have a curiosity about what that will be like to lean into my what's a good word to say? My crone, I guess that's the word, or being like an elder.
Well, and I think you're talking about so I call my methodology inner truth work. And, I just kind of spilled out of my mouth one day because I knew that there was something I was practicing that wasn't necessarily exactly aligned with everything I had learned from all my Buddhist teachers and all my yoga teachers, exactly the way I was doing it, and in some ways, Mandy, it was like compulsive. Like I would feel something that felt shadowy or felt like I was pushing like a wrinkle, for example, or something I didn't like, or something I didn't like about myself, or a relationship moment that had gone sideways. And instead of like turning away,
Mhm.
I would sit in meditation and it was almost like, as I talk about it now, it was almost like I was challenging it to come forward, like, come all the way forward so I can see you. You know what I mean? Like, I want to see all of you. I want to see. Now, I have not, I admit, one of the reasons you're inspiring me is that I've not made that with my own looks, but I have made that with how I show up and land on people, right? Like, I can be a polarizing person.
Mhm.
Some people really like me. Some people are like, I don't know what it is. I don't like her. And for a long time, I would just beat the shit out of myself for the side that didn't like me. Like, why don't they like me? And I was fixing and fixing and fixing. And in that, this sort of like, show me all the way what you don't like about yourself,
Mhm.
that did, like, refine that power that I wanna hear about the astrology, but it refined the power, and it refined the power, and it refined the power until I just didn't have the I didn't care anymore as much.
Yeah, that's cool.
Oh?
Yeah, it's funny as you were speaking, I think that's great. I mean, I think that, yeah, exaggerating, it's the same thing. It's really the same thing as talking about, like, getting a role where you're playing a shadow. It's you get to exaggerate parts of yourself that exist, really is what I mean, that's what actors are doing is they're just embodying parts of themselves. And so villains or whatever is just that person as that part of themselves. But talking about insecurity as well, I mean, there's also a thing of like, that's a shadow, right? Like feeling insecure, or, like around who likes you and who doesn't. I think that that's okay too. It's like
Totally.
there's nothing that is off limits. And in terms of our experiences as human beings. And I think that's where we don't have to be so afraid of things anymore.
And what a relief, I think of, like, because I wanna just talk a little bit about the yoga and then the astrology, but, like, what the way that I would love your take because 'cause I'm not the expert, but I always think of, like, one of the hardest poses for me for whatever reason was reverse triangle, and I began to think of every moment that did feel shadowy or did feel hard, like my reverse triangle,
Mhm.
right? Like, I would just have to breathe and lean into the hardest poses for me to try and find some, like, loosening and some opening and some widening,
Mhm.
and I'm curious if that tracks for you in terms of, like, going from acting and then moving into yoga and astrology.
Yeah, well, so what came right after acting was spinning, which was my introduction into teaching. And that that was like revealing the way that I talk to myself, the way that my self-talk, that was where I actually got to explore the positive shadow, which is how I bring myself through difficulty, like in order to really find that voice and to have transformation, you have to find the difficulty. I mean, that's the problem with the shadow, right? It's like it doesn't feel good. And at first, it doesn't feel good, and that's why we don't want to be in it. And I think that like the sensations that for me, I'm a very I'm a kinesthetic person. So I feel a lot in my body. Okay, so for yoga, for instance, or let's say you're doing any physical activity and you hit a wall or you hit a place that just feels impossible or doesn't feel good. That's when you get to tap into another part of yourself that's almost intangible, that is able to it's like when you lift weights at the gym, it's hard, and the reason and as it's hard, it's strengthening the part of yourself that actually can do it, and so in order to touch the part of yourself that is transformational and can do it and does have the power, you have to hit a point where you wanna give up. Like, that's a part of the process of being empowered, is being first, like, really hitting your limit and being disempowered. So, to me, what you're saying is you hit a point where you feel like you're not good or you can't do it or whatever, and then as you stay with it, you start to find a part of yourself that you couldn't access without hitting that limit, right? I mean, is that
Yep.
accurate?
Yeah. Yeah, that's completely accurate. Or, I mean, we turn away.
Mhm.
I love that you're paralleling it to physical activity because I think we're conditioned to think, okay, like when we hit a wall in physical activity, we dig deep and we find that next rung that we didn't know was there to like push through. And in a way, we're not really taught that in the same way about our psychology or our mental health, right? Like, and I'm not saying we should, like, push when we're in trauma or just push to push, but there is a way that I feel like we disown and we put things in I call it the giant jewel case, the treasure trove behind us as if it's not there. Like, "Look at me, just, like, paddling like crazy to not let you see all the parts of me that are hard or dark or sad or shameful
Mhm.
or joyful or hiding, whatever it is we're hiding. And so, like, this pushing through to be able to turn in the same way that you turn in physicality, to be able to turn into it and dig deeper. I think that's the piece that I hear you saying that feels true for me.
Yeah, psychologically, I'm just asking this question. So, you're saying that we don't because I think that doing physical activities brings you that's where so that's a way in to
Mm,
developing the psychology. Like, that's a for me, that's been a it's an easy in, and the reason is because you are putting yourself it's another version of being in a scene, like in an acting class. Another version is, "Okay, I'm going to put myself in a situation where I'm gonna hit my limit, and then I'm gonna find the thing where I can elevate out of it or move past it, find my strength." That does translate then to the psychological, to the mental health issue. That's why I think I mean, this is a theory, but I think that that's why many people who are either depressed or, have mental health issues are very, supported by physical exercise routines because you actually do start to find a part of your psychology that is only strengthened by difficulty, and I think that is helpful. I think that's always a helpful, like, useful tool. I don't know, I feel like maybe I got off track.
yeah. No, I don't think you did at all. I'm thinking back to the episode that I did with Stanford professor Henry Most, and he talked about how oftentimes, in the maturation of a young person to an adult, there's this moment, right, where our shadow kind of comes up. And in that moment, it's usually kind of in between like 28 and 32-ish. It can be any time, but that's like the sweet spot. And I'm sure you have something to say about astrology about that age. But we're seeing so often, it can happen at 25, 22, whenever. But it's sometime in that sort of late adolescence where predominantly we're also prescribing anti-anxietals,
Ah.
right? Because it's as if we're saying to younger people, "Oh, this is so hard, you can't do it. So we'll just give you." And I'm not saying that medicine is not important.
Yeah.
So please, listeners, don't hear that.
I know,
But
it's
I
such a
do think we're over. I know it's such a hard
hard
conversation.
conversation to have these days.
It is, but I mean, that wasn't available to us, Mandy. We had to figure out, how do we push through?
No, I know.
And it toughened us up. I mean, I hate to sound so Gen X, but
Well, when I was in my, early mid-20s, which I think is really for me, it was the hardest it was the most challenging time of my life, like, from between 22 and 26, 25, right? That was the hardest transition for me. One of them. I mean, I've had a few hard transitions, but that was one of them. And, I used to say, "Well, if people don't like my mood swings, they can go on medication." Because I
I love that. I love that.
because I did have mood swings then. You're going through a lot at that age, obviously. I mean, it is a huge leap that you're making from being a child, to being an adult in the world. Of course, you're gonna have some feelings about that no matter where you come from.
You shared a story with me that I then used. Well, I used it right away in my meditation class that I teach on Monday nights here in Lafayette, California. And I'm hoping you'd be willing to share it with the listeners, but it was about your accident.
Mm,
And it was about the fact that you basically took one day of pain medicine when you had basically a broken body. And you talked about how you reckoned with the pain in the same way that we're talking about digging deep to face
yeah.
our hardships in life, whatever they may be. Can you share that?
Yeah. Okay. So I was in a major, near fatal car accident, and I was in the hospital. And
Not too long ago.
it was in 2018, so it was long enough now. But in my when I was 50, which was so long ago now. But all go one direction. But anyway, that's great. No, so I was in this car accident and, basically I had a punctured lung, my spleen was lacerated and burst, so that happened. I had, like, 4 broken ribs, my spine was broken down to my from my lowest rib to my sacrum, the sides of my spine were broken, my actual spinal cord was fine, my sacrum was broken, and my sternum was broken. So after the first night, I had a and when I had the accident, pain is a very general term that people use, and so I was feeling into, okay, like pain, yeah, but it's like, what kind of pain is this? Is it a searing pain? Is this a pulse? Is it a burn? Is it, like, what is this? So that was part of just for me identifying what I was feeling was important. This is before I didn't take the medication, but I don't know what I was on because I was in the hospital. I wasn't on anything, actually. That's true. I wasn't on anything yet. I was waiting to get diagnosed. So I was in a lot of pain, and so I teased out all the different, sensations that I was having. That's something that I learned from teaching, and I think it's something maybe I was born with. I reframing, like, rather than pain, it's like, "Okay, what is the sensation?" So, got all the sensations. And then my strategy after that is, "Okay, this is where I'm feeling the pain, but where am I feeling free in my body?" You know what I mean? So, like, my whole left side was broken, but my legs felt okay, my head felt okay, my right arm felt okay. So once you locate where it's hurting, then you can go, "Okay, so where am I feeling good?" And then put your energy into the places that are feeling good. So that's really, like, the basic strategy, and I did share that with one of the nurses in the hospital, and she said, "Oh, that's some new information that we're getting from whatever meditation." I'm like, "Yeah, this is what I'm doing." But in terms of not taking the medication, so the first night I got I got Oxy and I thought, "Okay, well, whatever, I'll get a good night's sleep because this happened at night, then the next night it's like, "Okay, I'll get a good night's sleep, I'll do the Oxy." The Oxy took away my ability to feel the good places and just kind of dulled everything down, so it actually took away my ability to put my head into the places that feel good. So it was detrimental to me. So the next day I was like, "I don't want anything, I don't want anything. I wanna feel what my body feels like," because I knew that on day 2, that would be the maximum amount of pain that I would be feeling. Because usually day 1, your body's in shock, day 2 is when you're gonna feel it, Most injuries
Yeah.
that, right? Or even if you work out of the gym, it's usually day 2 where you feel your muscles. So I felt it, and I felt into all the sensations, and then the next day, it was like, "Okay, then I'll do, like, the ibuprofen or whatever twice a day," whatever it was, the minimal amount. But I knew that once I had felt the maximum amount, and I knew that once I felt then I would understand that from there on, it was just gonna get better and better. And so that really was and the ibuprofen didn't take away my ability to feel, like, the good places in my body, but it was very important for me to be able to first identify where's the pain, what is the pain? Not just where is the pain, but what is the sensation?
Wow. I mean, I just hearing that story a second time, it's even more profound to me. There's so much metaphor in it, but also the reality that most of your body sounds like it was broken. I mean, I know there were places that weren't broken, but and you said, "If I can
It
just."
wasn't most of my body, it was 14 bones, it was 14 places,
I know, but I'm hearing that, Mandy, and I'm like,
but that's not most.
I mean, I get a little shoulder ache and I'm like, ugh. So it's I just have so much respect for the way that you did this. This is like inner truth work, but doing it through broken bones, right? It's like, oh my gosh, Mandy. And it stayed with me recently. I have had just this back problem. And you were so inspiring to me. I was like, Carrie, yeah, your back hurts, but so much of yourself does not hurt.
Mhm.
There's so many parts that you can access.
Mhm.
This kind of like accessing our resilience,
Mhm. Mhm.
accessing the places of joy, accessing the places that don't hurt.
But and that is the so that is the opposite of the shadow, meaning the if we're bringing it back to shadow or and I guess that doesn't have to be the thing because this is just finding treasures in the trash, right? It's like it doesn't have to be a shadow thing at all. But
Well, I think a shadow, what you have shed light on for me is the shadow doesn't have to be some darky negative thing. The shadow is just a shadow. You can't have the shadow without having the light. And I think we get confused because we're like light somehow means it has to be dark or painful,
mhm,
right? It's just a different kind of treasure that you're finding in the trash. Different, it's just a different, it's a resilience treasure.
mhm, mhm. Yeah, I mean, you gotta have both, you know? I mean, I think it's like you got I think that's the thing is that we and that was what I started with, which is we are so, trained to focus only and to only talk about, the victory, we don't it's like, you don't wanna hear my stories about, the days that I can't get out of bed because I looked at my phone too much. It's like nobody wants to hear that. But,
Like
like,
all of us.
I had a day like that the other day where it was like, ugh, I just felt terrible, and it was mostly because the whole day I didn't have all of my human contact was through the computer, and my relaxation time was also in the computer, and I was just in this disembodied place, and I what I noticed was that yeah, that just didn't feel good, the next day. It's not an interesting story, but
Well, it is interesting because I think you're talking about something so profound that like this is like an everyday thing, right? Where like we get lost in the news or we get lost in our computers and then suddenly 2 hours go by and we look around and we're like, "Why am I sad?
right.
Why do I feel lonely?" Right? Well, it's because you've completely abandoned your body, you've abandoned nature, you've abandoned connection, right? Like that's why you're lonely and sad. It's not just because you're alone, quote unquote, right?
And I do think that that's a huge for me, it's a huge key is being embodied. I think being embodied is um, it's incredibly important, and I guess it's not overlooked, but it is overlooked. You know what I mean? It's like it's undervalued. It's undervalued, and I think that's why we really go through the hardest times. It's like, oh, I'm just so happy to be alive.
Yeah. Yeah, I really feel that, and I feel it in so many parts of your life. You've really lived your life in such a way. Okay, so we have something here on finding treasures in the trash called your trash can cards. And it's kind of it's like a we're just gonna spin the wheel, and by wheel, I mean, I'm gonna close my eyes and point to a question,
Okay,
and then you'll just answer that question. It's kind of the closing it's like the closing shot
okay.
here, Mandy. Ooh, this is a good one for you. If healing had a mascot, what would yours be?
Wow. Well, the first thing that popped into my head was like a little tiny fairy godmother. I guess it would be the blue fairy from Pinocchio.
Say more.
Well, oh, no, you know what it is? It's Jiminy Cricket. It's Jiminy Cricket. I don't know,
I love this, by the way, because you picked the blue fairy, which is kinda ingenue, and then you were like, "No, no, no, it's actually Jiminy Cricket."
because it popped into my head and I thought at first it was Tinkerbell, and then I was like, "Oh, no, it must be like" I was trying to, like, put it together for myself, and I was like, "Oh, it's from Pinocchio." And then I was like, "Oh, okay, it's the blue fairy," and then I realized, "No, no, no, it's actually Jiminy Cricket." So it did organically pop into my head, I just didn't recognize it. But yeah, so Jiminy Cricket so when I was a kid, I because I didn't really relate to the Disney princesses, I found myself relating to locking into Jiminy Cricket, which is the conscience. And, like, it's like when you wish upon a star, all that stuff. And I think Jiminy Cricket has always been like, it's basically like whatever if you wish for something, that it will come true. And I actually do believe, I mean, for me, everything that's happened is all of my dreams that I've ever had have come true. So have all of my fears. So it's just this idea that where I focus my attention, that's what's coming. And Jiminy Cricket is like the total mascot for me because I locked into the conscience. That's just what came to me. That's why it came to me. And you said, what would healing be like? Yeah, I think that it's like you just have to follow your guide. You have to follow your inner compass.
All right. Well, this has been wonderful, Mandy. Thank you. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much for having me. That was really fun.
We'll have you back. Bye. Thanks for spending time with me and for having the courage to listen inward. If you'd like to continue the journey, you can find me at bravedirections.com, and there you can sign up for my newsletter and something really exciting. If you're ready to begin exploring your own inner terrain, I've created something called 5 Days to Truth. It's a complimentary 5-day meditation journey that helps you start gently digging into your own trash and discovering what's there waiting for you. So until we meet again, be kind to yourself and trust what's emerging, because inside the muck lives the gold.
Thank you for tuning in. You've been listening to a Magic Thread Media podcast.